Hello, my family, friends, and esteemed colleagues. Another question came about explaining what does it really mean to have dehydrated cells. This is a good question because doctors don't really understand what is this hydration. Yeah, we are being told that hydration happens through osmotic absorption. And this is why inside of our cells we have a lot of potassium, because potassium is slightly larger than the openings of a cellular membrane. So potassium cannot freely, with the blood flow, just enter and come out of the cell. And this makes potassium trapped into the cell, so unless pressure increases, it cannot really push it out. It's a slight difference, but again, just by free flow, potassium cannot penetrate through these membranes. And since we have a high concentration of potassium in the cell, well, there is a reason for it. This actually makes the fluid inside of the cell denser. And we know from physics that if you have two liquids with different densities and then you have a membrane in between them, then the lower density liquid is going to be sucked into the higher density, and the suction is going to go until they kind of balance each other. And this is called osmotic action. This is how the cells hydrate by utilizing their what we call cellular osmotic pump. The problem is that for this pump to happen, cell has to be producing potassium because obviously it cannot get it from outside. Yeah, we now invent. This is typical for science. What they don't get, they invent. They know, well, it is there, so it had to come there, so there must be some mechanism, and then we invent the mechanism. There is no particular mechanism that will allow potassium to go into the cell and not allow it to come out of the cell. Okay? It doesn't work this way. Cell makes potassium and makes it through what we call cold fusion. Again, we are talking here about science as we are being preached. Now, when we go into quantum, we realize there are no atoms. And the size depends on the size of the geometric structure. And this geometric structure is built larger inside of the cell. So this way it can do its job. And right away it will have different properties because it has different geometric structure. But not to complicate things too much, going now into quantum in this way, let's use the Newtonian bullshit physics and stick to it and just explain that potassium is larger because it has more electrons around the orbit. So actually the electromagnetic field is larger and it doesn't allow it to pass through unless it's pushed a bit. Now, when the cell is like little sponges, when they are in a tissue and we have a flow of plasma, of blood, then whatever has a particle that is smaller than the cellular opening on a cellular membrane, then it can freely go in. So what we have, water can freely go into the cell, so can sodium, salt, and most minerals. They can freely enter. Certain things which are larger and a cell needs them have transporting mechanism, like glucose, for example. Glucose cannot come from the blood into the cell. So cell, when it needs glucose, sends out GLUT protein that traps it and pulls it in. Or if a lot of glucose happens in the blood, then body is programmed to solve this situation by injecting insulin, which relaxes membranes, so it can kind of absorb, the cell can kind of absorb the glucose. As we go with the hydration now stuff, when the cell is relaxed, the openings have certain size and things freely go in and out of the cell. Now, when you have a sponge and you put it in a slow flow floating water and sponge is dirty, then you are going to see some dirt coming around the sponge and going slowly out. Well, this is because the water can penetrate, but it doesn't really go deep. It goes just on the surface, tap and comes out. So it constantly does partial hydration and cleansing, constantly. Now the problem is that the more toxic blood becomes, the toxic elements will bother cells, so they will start constricting their membranes. Usually they do it with heat proteins, stress proteins, but it could be strictly, as we know, whenever something is put in toxic environment, it goes into self-preservation mode, which always comes down with crunching. We know it with telomeres. You have them in a toxic blood, they crunch, they shrink, because they coil up more. Cellular membrane will do the same. We do it same. If we are exposed to some bad environment, something yucky, you go, ugh. Okay, you get a little cold, rain comes, okay, and all these things, they constrict you. So cell will tighten the membrane, so less thing can penetrate in now, because the membrane gets a little smaller, the openings. And this is how the cell is going to protect itself from these toxic elements. And more toxicity there is in the blood, the more cells are going to crunch. Telomeres get shorter. Okay, they didn't get shorter because they physically get shorter. They get coiled up tighter curl. But the result is the same. It's a smaller exposure to the vibrations. So it's like making smaller antenna for your TV, and you will have a worse signal. So in many aspects, the cell is going to be more and more restricted with its activities. It's more and more in a protection mode. Less and less water starts coming in, and less toxicity comes out. It becomes trapped in a cell. The very problematic things for our cells are what we call medicinal remedies, because they are that toxic that actually cell has to defend itself from them. And here, most of the spices, they have toxic phenols, toxic to our cells. They don't want them, they close down. So whenever we say, wow, it's healthy to have cinnamon, you know, because your glucose, you know, that, well, cinnamon is toxic. So it is going to keep the cell squeezed, and this promotes dehydration because it doesn't even cleanse on the outskirts anymore as it used to before. Same happens with turmeric, same happens with garlic, same happens with ginger, any medication, pharmaceutical. So we have to understand how this body is constructed, how the things work. Now, there are metabolic processes in the cells, and cells are producing acids, uric acid, citric acid, lactic acid. And it has, the cell is always slightly acidic, which this is how it should be, but it controls the acidity level by rinsing out the excess of the acids. But to do that, it needs water. And if the free flow is good, okay, it's going to do it. It's going to go by itself. It doesn't need to engage the osmotic pump. It's not necessary. But, of course, this is ultimate cleanse because you actually pressurize the cell. And when it's pressurized, then with pressure, it pushes some of the potassium out, but also pushes heavy metals. This is a deep cellular cleanse, can only go if you engage the osmotic pump. Unfortunately, you will not be able to engage the osmotic pump if the cellular membrane receptor finds that there is something toxic in the blood. It will not allow production of potassium because cell then starts absorbing everything much faster. It cannot make conscious decision, okay, but I don't want this thing because it's toxic, I'll just absorb this. It is absorption. So everything or nothing. And cell, the receptor decides nothing. That's how we are programmed. It's a program. It's not mindful decision. It's sensor and switch. And if blood is toxic, the sensor doesn't trigger the switch. There is no production of potassium. And potassium, the way how Newtonian physics says it, goes by creating cold fusion and producing potassium by merging oxygen and sodium, natrium. And from 11 electrons of sodium and 8 of oxygen, you get 19 of potassium. Again, this is not going to be working if blood is toxic. If something is toxic in the blood, you can have perfectly clean blood because you are cleansing, you are drinking plasma, so your blood is clean. But you have a coffee, one coffee a day. Well, it will take at least 8 hours to get the caffeine out, which means for these 8 hours there will absolutely not be engagement of the cellular osmotic pump. Most likely longer. It all depends again on overall toxicity, on the level of plasma that you are drinking, because when you are drinking a lot of salty water, you are hydrating well. So you have all the minerals, you are drinking plasma, so you are maintaining your electrical conductivity. Of course, we don't know exactly how much body needs, how much salt with the water. So it doesn't matter because we have sensors and switches. Body will just eliminate the surplus of salt and surplus of water, no problem. And while doing this, it is going to be allowing cleansing also all the other garbage because it will not have to hold on any electrolytes. When we are not taking salt, and again, the only salt is a natural sea salt. Any other salt is far cry from seawater or fresh sea salt. And when you have a steady flow of these nutrients coming in, or these minerals, but it doesn't have to hold on to anything. It has plenty of blood, plenty of plasma. Blood is diluted. And energy flows beautifully because it is has perfectly conductivity. So you will have good magnetic field in the particles of the blood. They will repel, and you have very thin blood. But as the plasma level goes down, you still have the same amount of particles, like white blood cells, red blood cells, hormones and platelets and all kinds of stuff. That all stays steady, but plasma level is down, which makes your blood thicker. Now we say, oh, we'll thin the blood with anticoagulants. The only way to thin it is putting more plasma into it. Yeah, but we are told, no plasma. Water. Distilled water. Well, by doing that, yes, you bring water in and the body cannot measure it with the level of ions it has. So the conductivity goes down. And the switches and sensors, and shoot the water out of the body. And at the same time are trying to keep all the ions in. And if minerals are missing, if salt is missing, they will not filter bad proteins, garbage. They will not filter bacteria and fungus because they can use that as a electroconductive elements, because water by itself does not conduct electricity. And this is why we are being told, our kidney has a problem eliminating salt, and this is when you have more salt, it accumulates and gives you hypertension and gives you kidney problem. Bull. It's not how it works. But we are so mesmerized by our professors, by these experts, that we stop thinking. We just, well, he said so, she said so, must be that way. They know. They know this. Most of them are dumb as the dumbbells because nobody's thinking. Now, when the cell membranes are dense, tight, and they are not absorbing enough water through regular flow and pump is not working, cell will still have to eliminate its acids. But same as kidney, it will start tolerating more acidity before it gets it out. In kidneys, we see it in darker urine. And on the blood or on the cell level, we don't know about it. We don't see it. But what we see is that properly hydrated cell is round. and pressurized like a ball. Now, when a ball loses air, it flattens out, so becomes oval. Majority of our cells are oval, which means they are dehydrated. They don't have proper osmotic pressure. Why? Because they are missing minerals. And because of this, they are missing water. And also because blood is toxic. So basically, hydration is out of question. Cell does not want to absorb toxic material. But we personally don't know nothing about it. And as the cell loses more and more water, it becomes flatter and flatter until it starts resembling actually a dry fruit, because it gets squeezed. This is high dehydration. This is your typical cancer cell, tumor cell. Now, we can see this problem. And this is why I always like to see people when I talk to them. I don't want to communicate on telephone, even on using a video, because I need a bigger picture. Okay, so I use computer, bigger screen, because I have to see the scan. It tells me everything I want to know. You can see beautiful actresses, but you get a little close up to their skin. Young woman and has these little wrinkles, especially on the neck, but around the mouth first you can see them. Well, this is sign of very heavy cellular dehydration. Now we have companies, supplement companies, Biofake for example. They are promoting all kinds of stuff to make you look younger. You need, your connective tissue is not growing because you are getting older, so this makes you feel wrinkled, and this is why you have to drink our product, and it is going to make you look younger. Boom. Hydration, plasma. You hydrate, wrinkle goes away. Again, hydrate on a cellular level, but to get to cellular level hydration, first you have to cleanse the blood, because cell will not hydrate and it will cringe. And as blood gets cleaner, the cell relaxes. And more water penetrates and it starts cleansing passively, cleanses, until the blood becomes clean enough that the receptor gives permission of engaging the osmotic pump, production of potassium. And usually we can see this. If you are on a protocol, then you will notice by drinking 3 liters of plasma or more a day, you are going to have probably the morning diarrhea, and you are going to be cleansing and having these diarrheas, and all of a sudden you are going to notice, usually after 3 weeks, you notice that you still have this kind of mucus stuff coming out of you, but your excrement, your feces, is like in little balls. Well, this is the sign that your body needs more plasma. Now, why all of a sudden needs more plasma? Because cellular membranes are opening up. and more flow goes in, and a cell hydrate actually. Again, it is a slow hydration, but if you are really careful and you don't take any phytotoxin, no plants, forget about freaking plants, okay? Spirulina will stop it, algae will stop it, spices will stop it. So get rid of that garbage. And you will engage finally the osmotic pump, and your cells will go, they will start soaking in the liquid, and then you need to drink maybe 6-8 liters of plasma a day just to not to be constipated, because so much water plasma will be entering your cells, and at the same time it displaces the dirt, so shoots it back into the blood, and now blood needs to be detoxified. So you are urinating, you are having diarrheas, and you are hydrating, so you need a huge amount of plasma for the system to run. And if you don't do it, if you decide, no, I don't want this diarrhea, well, you are going to be constipated. And then you say, well, I'm drinking 5 liters of plasma, I never drank nearly as much. And I never had this constipation, and I'm constipated now. Yeah, because you have never been hydrating before, and you have never been cleansing before. And now you are allowing hydration, but you don't have enough for cleansing. So body is reabsorbing all the possible plasma from your colon back in to the circulation, which makes your feces dry, compact, and you get constipated. And now you cannot detoxify through colon, and this can bring headaches, and this can bring pain in the body, and because your blood is now becoming very toxic, because cells are shoving the toxin out of their environment into the blood. And toxic blood brings all the symptoms of what we call diseases, rheumatism, or chronic stuff, pain, headache. So we have to keep, once when you detoxify, well, you gotta do the right thing and allow your body and help it to do the thing correctly. Otherwise, you are going to make a jam. You are going to jam the system. It's not going to work right. So finally, it cannot detoxify properly through a mucosal tissue. Or maybe you start making more phlegm because it's going to go out through lungs. It's also mucosal tissue. But then finally it will end up in your skin. And you get up with itchy skin, rashes. You want to avoid this. You want to force the cleanse through your kidneys and through mucosal tissue, through colon. Colon is a huge detox valve. So whenever you see someone having like dry skin or little creases, cellular detox, deep cellular detox of dehydration. Cells are lacking plasma. No amount of collagen is going to make any difference whatsoever. This is all big scam with this collagen bullshit. Don't buy into it. Hydrate. It drives me crazy when I listen to people, oh yeah, it helps. I tried, it works. Yeah, I have it in coffee. Coffee stops hydration. How the heck are you going to hydrate? How the heck are you going to fill in the creases with collagen? You have collagen, you don't have water. You don't have plasma. So this is how stuff works. And it is very simple once when you understand the process. So stop buying into this baloney science of supplementing They are no better than pharmacists. The same crap based on the same science, which is the crappy science. You got to learn the truth. Well, thank you for listening. Love you all.